Hello there, welcome back to Jennie Designs with Paper. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. I'm working on an art journal page, so get comfy and let's get crafty. So I am working on the September prompts for the Mission Inspiration Facebook group, and the weekly prompts for the month of September were healing, song, opposites, and fragility. So I took all 4 weekly prompts and turned them into one art journal page. To begin with, I have a piece of mixed media paper that is about 5 by 8 inches, and on a piece of rice paper, I printed out a picture of the caduceus. Normally, I don't like snakes in any way, shape, or form, but I will ignore the fact that they are on the caduceus. I'm going to go ahead and add that rice paper down to my mixed media paper with some liquid medium. This is Liquitex matte medium, and I'm just smearing that on with a brush, and then I'm going over the rice paper. I'm carefully going over that printed image of the caduceus because I don't want it to smear. It is just printed on the rice paper with my inkjet printer, so I do have to be a little bit careful, but I do want to cover it because I want to make it non-porous, non-smearing. And once I have that all covered, I'm going to go ahead and heat set this. And I am going to heat set this maybe a little longer than I would on a regular cardstock or mixed media paper, just because I want to make sure it is all the way dry before I move on to my next step. In fact, I'm even going to flip the page over and heat set it from the back. Again, I'm going to be adding some acrylic paint, and that rice paper does take a little bit longer to dry than maybe a napkin or other pieces of paper. So once I have that all dried and I'm happy with it, I'm going to go ahead and pull out some acrylic paints. And they're called Lumiere. They're by Jacquard. I bought them on Amazon. They are paints that have some mica in them. And I have kind of a gold, a pink, a purple, and a pewter color, all of which have some gold mica flakes in them. And I'm starting by adding that gold color paint over the center of that caduceus. And I began with a paintbrush, but I didn't like the brush strokes it was leaving. So I dug around in my stash and found some makeup sponges. And I just cut one into 4 pieces because I'm using 4 colors. And I went ahead and added a little bit more of that gold color paper, or gold color paint rather, with that sponge. And then I went into the red color. This is actually called Metallic Russet. The yellow is called Sunset Gold. And I went around the yellow, and I'm just the idea comes directly from Mike's inspiration photo, right? With the lighter colors being in the center, going outward, getting darker. And my brain was kind of focused on that image that he created, but then adding that caduceus to the center to kind of indicate that symbol of healing, of doctors, of medicine. And this goes clear back to like a Greek mythology, right? That caduceus, and even farther back, if you are religious, it goes back to Moses and the snakes on the serpent. How the Israelites were told to look up and they would be healed from the bites of the fiery serpents, right? So this idea of this symbol of healing that goes as far back as Moses was kind of in my brain. I just had to figure out how to make it part of the page. So it became the background image. So I went ahead and added, after that red color, I added a halo violet gold, is this purple color. It is a lot lighter on the paper than it is in the bottle. And then I went ahead and added the pewter. And the pewter is kind of the outline, the edge. One thing I kind of wish I hadn't trimmed that rice paper down quite so close to the same size as my page, because it is a little bit shorter on the right-hand side, a little bit more narrow. I wish I had left it a little bit bigger and then trimmed it down when I was finished with the page. Once I have this pewter layer, words are hard, layer on, I went ahead and cleaned up my workspace because I'm going to go back in and add some more of the purple. I felt like that dark pewter color kind of took over the purple, but also the purple was not as dark as that red, that russet gold. So I'm going to start adding layers of the pewter, and then I even went back and added some more of that gold, that sunset gold color. I really like these acrylic paints. They are more of a transparent paint than an opaque paint. So that does allow them to layer and blend a little bit better than maybe a traditional acrylic paint that is more opaque, right? With acrylic paints, normally once you layer them, If they're wet, they blend, and if they're not, they just cover each other up. So they are kind of a nice paint. I've had them in my stash for a while. They were definitely an impulse buy on Amazon one day. But, you know, things come up in your, hey, we have this deal that you might like. And you're like, yes, I need that in my life. And that's how I got these paints. I am going to go ahead and heat set them with my heat tool. Again, going a little bit longer than average maybe, or my average anyway, and making sure it is nice and dry. That dark pewter color is still not as dark as I would like it to be. So I did some thinking as I moved on to the next step about how I could maybe darken that up or change the look of that. So I thought about it a little bit and I decided to move on. So I'm going to move on to song. And for song, I'm using this Tim Holtz tissue paper because it has some music notes on it. So I just ripped off a little strip, and then I'm going to take this really old tool in my stash. This is a decal edge ruler. This has been in my stash since I started scrapbooking. It doesn't work very well anymore, especially on this thin tissue paper that's hard to grab an edge on. But I didn't want clean edges. I didn't want to cut it with the paper cutter or scissors because clean edges are a little bit harder to blend on the page. So I went ahead and trimmed all of these music notes down and the staff, the music staff. And then I went, how am I going to put this on? How am I going to add it? I thought maybe I could do all four corners. The pieces were a little bit thick for that. I didn't love that. I did, this is all me playing. I didn't know how I was going to add it. I just knew that this is how I wanted to add that song element to my page. So I did go ahead and trim those pieces a little thinner. I am adding them with that same matte medium and a brush. I could have and probably should have stopped at just this little section on the top and a little section on the bottom. But you know me, if I'm not doing all the things, then, well, I must be not myself that day. Because once I had these pieces on, I went ahead and added a third piece in that bottom left-hand corner. Now, did I add a piece in the top right-hand corner? No, I did not. I stopped at 3. Why? Your guess is as good as mine. I did do them in layers instead of one solid strip so that they kind of looked a little bit less uniform and more random, if that's the right word. Yeah. So I thought about putting another piece up there in that top right-hand corner. I did not. I went ahead and heat set that matte medium. And when it was all set, I also went ahead and trimmed off all of the pieces of tissue paper that were hanging off the edge of my page. I just used a pair of scissors and trimmed them off real quick. I probably edited that part out because I didn't know if that was something people really wanted to watch. All right, so we have our first 2 word prompts. We're moving into the third, which is opposites. And I'm going to use this stencil that I picked up at Hobby Lobby and some white acrylic paint. This is the Distress paints. I'm trying to use all of them up because they are in my craft room. I will also be using a stippling brush. I don't love it. I thought with using this stippling brush, it would make that shape or the shape of that stencil a little bit more defined. Yeah, I don't know. I don't love it. And it could be that the paper was too textured or my page is too textured. I don't know. I don't love it. But I do like the nod to opposites using black and white. So on the bottom end of the page, I used a little bit more of this stencil. And it kind of goes most of the bottom of the page and just stippled on, there we go, a little bit of that shape. And then I flipped my page over, cleaned off my stencil, and used just a little bit of the stencil and at the top because I didn't want it to come down over the top of that caduceus too far, even though the caduceus is pushed way back into the background now. And I opted to use this kind of fleur-de-lis part of this flourish in 3 parts on the bottom of the page. And that part I do like. I don't love, maybe my brush was too wet. There was too much paint on my brush, so I don't like how undefined the edges are. But I do like having the 3 pieces at the top and the bottom being kind of one solid connected piece. I do like how that turned out. So while I was heat setting this, I realized I had a plan on how I could introduce like a darker edge to that pewter paint. I've been contemplating how am I going to get this dark edge darker. I didn't love that pewter paint was so light. And what I decided to use was archival ink. Surprise, surprise, right? I probably use it on every page. So I did pull out my ink blending foam and my black archival ink, and I went around the edge. I kind of picked it up off my work surface and brushed it, used the ink blending foam, as opposed to blending it on from off the page, right? I felt like the page was a little bit too, not stiff enough to handle that. But also I didn't want it to come in too far. I really wanted this to just be that outside dark border edge. You know, we're going from light out to dark, and I really wanted it to be that outside dark edge. And I like this a lot better. You can still see a little bit of the mica through that archival paint, especially because that purple perimeter is quite thick. So the last word was fragility. And I immediately thought of broken hearts. I don't know why. That's just what I thought of. That's where my brain went. So I pulled out one of my heart dies. I think this was a Hero Arts die. And I cut out the largest one that would fit on my page. And then I used a pair of scissors to zigzag cut that right up the middle. I did layer it on a couple pieces of black cardstock just for some thickness and structure, because I used a piece of white pattern paper that was quite thin. And then I am going to glue down the two halves of this heart onto my page. I want that the crack part of it, the broken part of it, to be intentionally visible, which is why I went around it with the black, part of why I went around it with the black archival ink. The other part was to hide the white core of that pattern paper. But I wanted that, like, I'm not going to put it back together exactly. Like, I want there to be a little bit of a seam through that. So I'm going to add some pressure to the back of the page and make sure that glue is nice and attached. And then I have printed out a fragile label. This is literally a label for something to return, like from the Amazon store, that says fragile. I accidentally printed a return label twice. So there you go. Who knew that your scraps would come in handy, right? Once I had that fragile label put across the broken part of my heart, I went ahead and punched the holes in my page to add it to my notebook. I am going to use some liquid glue and my copy of the word prompts to add them to the back of my page. And when this is done, I am going to sign and date it. I did use a white gel pen, and I dated it September, even though I made it in October, because these were the September prompts. Here is my art journal page. This was a quick one. Once I got on a roll, it came together quite quickly. Getting started was a little bit harder. So thanks for hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I have a couple of other videos here I think you will like as well. I've also added that subscribe button. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, I would love it if you did. Give me a thumbs up if you liked the video. Leave me a comment down below, and have a really great day.